Let's talk about something that's been living rent-free in my head ever since that first image dropped. The live-action God of War series coming to Prime Video. And before the paparazzi could even sniff around set, Amazon and Sony went ahead and released the debut still themselves, which honestly is a power move. The photo gave us our first real look at Ryan Hurst and Callum Vinson suited up as Kratos and Atreus, and I have to say, whoever's handling the production design deserves a raise because the visual fidelity to the source material is genuinely impressive. It's not a loose interpretation. It looks like someone pulled these characters straight off a PS5 screen and dropped them into the real world. Now, before we get into the casting, the story, and what this show could actually become, let me give you a little context if you're somehow new to this franchise, because God of War is not a simple thing to explain to the uninitiated. The series was created by David Jaffe and built out by Santa Monica Studio, a first-party PlayStation developer, and it has been one of Sony's crown jewels since the very first game launched on PS2 back in 2005. That original game gave us Kratos, a Spartan warrior bound in service to the Olympian gods. Ares, the actual god of war at the time, manipulates Kratos into killing his own wife and daughter in a fit of blind rage. And from that moment on, the entire series becomes one man's furious, blood-soaked path toward revenge. Kratos kills Ares, becomes the new god of war. Then in the 2007 sequel, he starts butting heads with Zeus himself, and by the time God of War 3 rolled around in 2010, he had essentially dismantled the entire Greek pantheon. Mount Olympus was rubble, the gods were dead, Kratos was somehow still standing. Then came the 2018 reboot, or soft reboot, or sequel, depending on how you want to classify it, which is the game the show is actually based on. Set roughly 150 years after the events of God of War 3, Kratos has somehow survived the destruction of ancient Greece, traveled north, and settled in the Norse realms. He has a new life, a deceased wife named Faye, also known as Laufey, and a 10-year-old son named Atreus. The entire game is built around one journey, spreading Faye's ashes from the highest peak in all the 9 realms. What looks like a father-son road trip gradually reveals itself to be something far more mythologically loaded, and the relationship between Kratos and Atreus is what elevates the 2018 game from a great action game to a genuinely moving piece of storytelling. That's the version Amazon is adapting, and honestly, it's the right call. Ronald D. Moore, the guy behind Battlestar Galactica, Outlander, and For All Mankind, is producing it, and his track record with long-form mythological and sci-fi storytelling makes him a genuinely compelling fit here. Battlestar Galactica in particular dealt with gods, fate, and cycles of violence in ways that feel thematically adjacent to what God of War is doing. This isn't a random hire. Ryan Hurst as Kratos' casting I didn't know I needed until it was announced. What makes it especially interesting is that Hurst already played Thor in God of War Ragnarok, the 2022 sequel, so he's not coming into this cold. He knows the world, he understands the tone, and physically, the man is built for the role. But more importantly, Kratos in the 2018 game isn't just a rage machine anymore. He's a father trying to be better than the monster he was, trying to teach restraint to a son who has no idea what his father has done. Hurst has that kind of weathered internal conflict energy that I think is going to translate incredibly well. Callum Vinson takes on the role of Atreus, and from what we've seen in that first image, the kid looks the part. In the games, Atreus is sharp, curious, and desperately seeking his father's approval in a way that sometimes leads him to make reckless decisions. He's also a skilled archer, and the mythology woven into his character, without spoiling too much, goes very deep. There's a reason longtime fans have nicknamed him by another name entirely. The supporting cast is stacked in a way that tells you Amazon is not treating this like a B-tier prestige project. Mandy Patinkin is playing Odin, the All-Father, who functions as the primary antagonist across the back half of the 2018 game and all of Ragnarok. Odin in these games is not your MCU Odin. He's cunning, obsessive, paranoid, and genuinely dangerous. Patinkin has the gravitas and the intelligence to play that kind of layered villain without tipping into cartoonish territory. Olafur Darri Olafsson is playing Thor, and the description Amazon gave for this version of the character is worth paying attention to. This Thor is described as a former soldier of Asgard drowning in alcohol, haunted by what he's done in Odin's name, which tracks directly with how the 2018 game sets him up before Ragnarok fully explores him. It's a very un-MCU take on Thor, darker and more tragic, and casting someone like Olafsson, who has real dramatic weight, is a good sign. Max Parker comes on board as Heimdall, Asgard's self-appointed watchman and one of the more compelling antagonists in Ragnarok. Heimdall meanwhile, in the games has foresight, which makes him nearly untouchable in a fight, and his personality is layered with arrogance, masking deep insecurity about his place in Odin's hierarchy. That detail about him feeling underappreciated by his father is pulled almost directly from the game's characterization. Teresa Palmer plays Sif, Thor's wife, a mortal woman who married into godhood and still doesn't feel like she belongs in Asgard. That tension between her origins and her current world is something the games only hint at, so it'll be interesting to see if the show gives her more space to breathe. Alistair Duncan voices Mimir in the games. He's been the voice of the character since 2018, and he's being brought into the live-action series as well, which is a brilliant piece of continuity. Mimir serves as the exposition engine and emotional counterweight of the journey, described as a cheery Celtic fellow with an encyclopedic knowledge of Norse mythology, and Duncan already knows this character better than almost anyone alive. Jeff Golka is playing Sindri, one half of the dwarven blacksmith duo who upgrade Kratos' weapons throughout the games. Danny Woodburn is presumably playing Brock, his brother, though that name hasn't been officially confirmed at time of filming. Brock's personality in the games is exactly what Amazon described: brash, irreverent, gruff. And if Woodburn is leaning into that energy, it could be one of the most entertaining recurring dynamics in the show. Ed Skrein has also been cast as Baldur, the latest addition to an already stacked roster. In the 2018 game, Baldur serves as the primary antagonist you encounter throughout the main story, a Norse god who feels no physical pain, which makes him one of the most unnerving enemies Kratos has ever faced. He's not a brute, he's relentless, unpredictable, and deeply broken in ways the game slowly peels back as you progress. Skrein has the physicality and that particular brand of cold intensity the role demands, and honestly the casting makes a lot of sense once you picture it. Production started in Vancouver, and that first image was released proactively before any candid set photos could leak, which tells you the team is being deliberate and careful about how they're rolling this out. That's a good sign. Shows that get embarrassed by leaked set photos often struggle with public perception before a single episode airs. The God of War team clearly wants to control the narrative. As for a release date, there isn't one yet. Pre-production was still ramping up when the January 2025 announcement dropped, and given the visual effects load this show is going to carry, Asgard, the World Tree, giants, monsters, and all the rest of the Norse cosmology, we're realistically looking at 2027 at the earliest. Amazon also confirmed the series has a 2-season order, which is exactly the kind of commitment you want to hear for a story this dense. 1 season to cover the 2018 game, 1 season to cover Ragnarok if they pace it right. The comparison points people are going to reach for are The Last of Us and The Mandalorian. Both use that same older protector and young child dynamic as their emotional core, and God of War was doing that before both of them. The 2018 game came out before The Mandalorian premiered, and the same year as the book The Last of Us was eventually adapted from. Kratos is also doing the same haunted, reluctant warrior thing that Logan did in 2017, except with a literal mythology built around him. The tonal overlap is real, and if you loved either of those properties, there's a strong argument that God of War could hit even harder, because the lore here is genuinely enormous, the stakes are cosmic, and the emotional core of the story is about a man trying to break a cycle of inherited violence before it consumes his son. That, more than anything, is what I'm watching for. Not the axe throws, not the giants, not the production value, though all of that matters. What I want to see is whether Ryan Hurst can carry the quiet scenes, the ones where Kratos says almost nothing and means everything, because in the games, Christopher Judge made that work with body language and a few syllables at a time. Translating that to live action, with a real camera and real lighting and a real kid across from him, is going to be the real test. And based on what little we've seen, I think there's a real shot this lands.